You're listening to Fear Spiral, where every whisper drags you deeper. Every shadow hides a truth you're not meant to see. These are the stories that twist through the mind long after the lights go out. Real voices, real encounters. Welcome to The Spiral. It always starts with a lockdown drill. But what if the voice on the intercom isn't your principal? What if the footsteps in the hall don't stop when they should? From glowing eyes behind the library shelves to a second announcement that never should have played. And the last light still burning in room 108. These are the real stories of students who didn't make it out before the sirens stopped. Turn down the lights. And remember, once the doors lock, you're not always alone. The footsteps in the hall. It was late, around 8:45 p.m. when our high school went into lockdown. I remember the exact time because I'd just finished my shift helping the theater club set up lights for the spring play. It wasn't unusual for a few of us to stay late. We were all trying to impress Mr. Reynolds, the drama teacher, and he trusted us with the equipment. There were 6 of us that evening, but by the time things started getting weird, only 2 remained. Me and my friend Jason. Everyone else had already gone home after packing up. Mr. Reynolds locked up the auditorium doors and said he was heading out, but he gave us the master key ring to put everything back in storage before we left. It felt cool, like we were trusted adults. The hallways were silent, that kind of heavy silence you only hear after hours in a school. The hum of the vending machines, the distant buzz of fluorescent lights, it all felt louder because there wasn't a single other sound. The air smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals and old paint. We were heading down the back corridor toward the equipment room near the gym. That's when the intercom crackled to life. Attention, all staff and students. Lockdown, repeat lockdown. This is not a drill. Jason froze, turning to me with this wide-eyed look. Wait, what? There's no one even here right now, he said. I thought maybe it was a mistake. Someone accidentally triggered the system. But then about 15 seconds later, the hallway lights flickered once and went dim. Our school's lockdown system automatically shuts off most lights to make it harder for an intruder to see inside rooms. Jason muttered, "Dude, we need to get into a classroom." We darted into the science lab right across from us, locked the door and killed the lights. I remember my heartbeat echoing in my ears, that kind of pounding that makes your breathing uneven. We crouched down behind the teacher's desk, trying not to make a sound. At first, nothing happened. Just silence. But then, faintly as I heard footsteps, they were slow, deliberate. Coming from the direction of the gym, clack. Clack, clack. Jason's eyes met mine. Neither of us moved. The footsteps grew louder, echoing down the empty hallway. Whoever it was wasn't running. They were just walking. Unhurried, like they had all the time in the world. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a janitor. Maybe a police officer responding to the lockdown. But then I remembered something. Our janitors leave by 7 p.m. and the police? They usually call in first before entering. Then came the sound of a locker door slamming somewhere in the distance. Metal echoing off tile floors. Then another. And another. Like someone was walking down the hallway, randomly banging locker doors open. Jason whispered, barely audible, "What if someone broke in?" My mouth felt dry. We just stay quiet. They'll send cops. Just stay quiet. Minutes crawled by. The footsteps stopped, then started again, closer this time. They paused right outside the lab door. We both stopped breathing. The sound of a hand jiggling the door handle made every hair on my body stand on end. It was locked. But whoever was out there tried it twice, then pressed on the door softly, like testing it. Jason's hand slowly reached for his phone. He typed a message and turned the screen to me. "Call 911? I shook my head. We didn't know where the person was, and I was terrified the phone's faint sound or light would give us away. Then we heard it. A knock. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. We didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't even blink. After maybe 10 seconds, the person outside started whispering. I swear on my life I heard a man's voice saying, "Open the door. It's okay." But it wasn't anyone we recognized. The voice was low, shaky but almost taunting, like someone pretending to sound calm. Then silence again. A few moments later, we heard him walk away. We waited, maybe 5 minutes, before we dared to move. Jason was shaking so bad he accidentally knocked a pen off the desk, and the sound of it hitting the tile echoed louder than anything. Then came something that chilled me more than anything else. A single tap on the glass window of the classroom door. It was so soft we almost thought we imagined it. But when I looked up, I saw a shadow on the other side, the outline of a man, tall, just standing there, not moving. We couldn't see his face because the hall was mostly dark, but there was just enough of a glow from the exit light to see that silhouette, motionless. Right at our door, I whispered, "Oh my God." He just stood there. After maybe 30 seconds, and which felt like an hour, he knocked again, slow and deliberate, and then the shadow disappeared. We didn't move until we heard sirens outside. Through the faint cracks of the window blinds, we saw the flash of red and blue lights reflecting in the hallway. Someone on the intercom finally said, "All clear. Police are on site." We waited another full minute before unlocking the door. When we stepped into the hallway, we saw 2 officers sweeping the area with flashlights. One of them asked us to stay put while they cleared the gym and locker area. Apparently, someone had triggered the lockdown manually from the main office. The keypad required a staff code. But when they checked the security cameras, here's the thing. The footage between 8:40 and 9:05 p.m. was completely blank. Just static. Every camera in that hallway, including the one outside the science lab, had lost feed for exactly 25 minutes. The police never found anyone. They said maybe a system malfunction caused the alarm. But that didn't explain the missing footage, or the man who knocked on our door. A few days later, I went back to grab my jacket from the lost and found. One of the janitors was mopping near the gym and said casually, "You boys were here the other night, right?" You know, the side exit door by the gym was propped open when we got in the next morning. I asked if maybe a teacher left it like that. He said no, it had been wedged open from the inside, with a broken piece of wood. I still don't know who that man was, or how he got out. But sometimes when I walk past that same hallway after dark, I swear I can still hear the sound of footsteps echoing on the tile, slow and steady like someone never left. The boy in the storage room. I was a junior when our school first started doing lockdown drills. They always felt pointless to me. 10 minutes crouched under a desk, texting friends and laughing quietly until the intercom said, "All clear." But the night it actually happened for real, it stopped being a joke. It was a Friday night in October around 9:30 p.m. I was helping my art teacher, Mrs. Devlin, prepare for the district art fair. A few of us were painting backdrops in the EO art wing, which was the farthest corner of the school, old, echoey, and always colder than the rest of the building. By that hour, everyone else was gone. Just me, Mrs. Devlin, and one other student named Brianna. The halls were dark except for our room's light spilling onto the floor through the windowed door. We were cleaning brushes when the intercom crackled. "Attention staff and students, lockdown, repeat lockdown." Mrs. Devlin froze mid-sentence. "What? That can't be right," she said quietly. The announcement cut off with a sharp static pop. Then nothing. I remember the sudden drop in temperature, or maybe it was just adrenaline. Mrs. Devlin immediately turned off the lights, locked the door, and whispered, "Both of you under the tables." We ducked behind the long counter where the kilns and storage cabinets were. The art room had huge windows that looked into the hallway. No blinds, no cover. I could see the dim blue of the exit signs glowing faintly in the distance. For a few minutes it was silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the ventilation system and my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then came footsteps. They weren't heavy boots like police or security guards. They were lighter, sneakers. The steps echoed through the art wing, deliberate and uneven, like whoever it was didn't care about being quiet. Brianna's breathing got shaky. I reached over and squeezed her arm, trying to calm her down, but she whispered, "That's coming from the storage room." The storage room was connected to our class, a small locked area at the back where they kept supplies. I shook my head, mouthing, "No, that's outside." Then we heard it again. A soft dragging sound, like something heavy being moved across the tile floor just beyond that thin wooden door separating us from the storage space. Mrs. Devlin frowned and whispered, "Stay here." She started to get up, but Brianna grabbed her wrist. "Don't," she mouthed, eyes wide. I could hear the metal handle of the storage door rattle once, then again, then A faint click. That door was supposed to lock from the inside. No one should have been in there. The handle turned all the way this time, and the door creaked open about an inch before stopping against a stack of boxes. Mrs. Devlin froze. From where I was crouched, I could just barely see the thin crack and something moved. A shadow, not full, not clear, just the edge of a figure standing inside that pitch-black room. Mrs. Devlin whispered, "Who's in there?" No response. Then, knock, 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 3 slow taps from the inside of the storage room door. Brianna gasped out loud. Mrs. Devlin stepped forward quietly, keeping her voice calm but shaking. "If you're trapped, it's okay. Just say something." Nothing. She took a step closer. Then, from inside, a boy's voice said softly, "Help me." It was barely a whisper. A teenage boy's voice, shaky, desperate. Mrs. Devlin's face changed, confusion mixed with concern. She looked at us. "Stay back," she mouthed, then reached for the door. "Don't," I whispered, but she'd already turned the handle. The door creaked open halfway and she leaned in with her phone flashlight. The beam caught on shelves, paint cans, old cardboard, but no one. The room was empty. She stepped inside slowly, looking around. "Hello?" That's when we heard a different sound, a door slamming shut. But it wasn't the storage room door, it was the art room door behind us. Brianna and I spun around. The door we had locked was now wide open. Someone had opened it. We froze. The hallway outside was pitch black except for the red exit sign glowing at the far end. For a second, I thought I saw a silhouette move across the hall. Fast. Too fast for me to make out. Mrs. Devlin came running back out of the storage room whispering, "What was that?" We didn't answer. She quietly shut and locked the art room door again, flicked the lights back off, and we hid behind the counter once more. I texted 911 with shaking fingers. "We're in Lockridge High, Art Room 204, intruder inside." We waited. The minutes stretched like hours. Every small sound made us jump. The pipes creaking, a chair settling. Then came a sound I'll never forget. Soft breathing. Right behind the counter. Mrs. Devlin looked at me with this pale expression. She mouthed, "Stay down." I turned my head slowly. Through the narrow gap between the floor and the bottom of the counter, I saw shoes, dirty white sneakers, standing just a few feet away. He, or whoever it was, was inside the classroom with us. He just stood there breathing, slow, uneven. Then I heard the soft scrape of metal, like something being dragged across the counter's surface. A pair of scissors. I felt tears well up. I wanted to scream, but my throat locked. Then, suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the building, a door slamming hard somewhere near the gym. The figure in our room froze, then darted toward the hallway. We heard him run. A few seconds later, the intercom crackled again. "All clear. Police are on site. Remain where you are." It took every ounce of courage to lift my head. The room was empty. The scissors were gone. When the police entered, they escorted us out through the back exit. One officer stayed behind to check the art room. Later, he told us something that still keeps me up at night. He said when they checked the storage room, they found a sleeping bag, some empty food wrappers, and a stack of old student ID cards, one of which belonged to a boy who had disappeared from our school 3 years ago. They think he'd been living there on and off, using the art wing as shelter. They never caught him. Every night since, I think about that soft voice saying, "Help me." And I wonder, was he asking for help? Or was he just trying to make us open the door? The eyes in the library. It happened during my senior year of high school, about 2 months before graduation. I wasn't supposed to be at school that late, but I had volunteered to help Mrs. Keller, the librarian, organize some books for the upcoming reading fair. I'd done it before, and honestly, the library at night was peaceful. It was around 8:10 p.m. and the halls outside were dead silent. The library's fluorescent lights flickered occasionally, and the air smelled faintly of old paper and lemon cleaner. Mrs. Keller was in her office in the back, and I was reshelving a cart of books near the far corner, the part of the library that faced the courtyard windows. The sun had long set. Outside, everything looked like a reflection, rows of books and my own faint image mirrored in the glass. That's when the intercom buzzed. Attention. Lockdown in effect. This is not a drill. The voice was flat, mechanical. No explanation, just those words. I froze mid-step, looking toward the office window. Mrs. Keller was standing inside, phone in her hand, her expression blank. Then she mouthed, "Lock the doors." She turned the office light off and shut herself in. I moved fast, locked the double doors to the hallway, switched off most of the library lights, and crouched behind the checkout counter. My heart was already racing. At first, it was dead quiet. You could hear the faint hum of the ceiling fans, the occasional pop from the vents, and then a noise. It was soft, a faint squeak, like a shoe sole sliding on the polished tile floor. I peeked over the counter toward the hallway entrance. Nothing. But the sound came again, a slow, dragging step like someone walking but trying not to make sound. My first thought was that maybe a security guard was moving through, checking rooms. But then I remembered, security didn't work nights on weekdays. Mrs. Keller's office light flickered once. Then her door creaked open just an inch. I saw her face and pale, eyes wide, and she whispered across the room, "Do you hear that?" I nodded. Then we both froze as the sound of knocking echoed faintly through the library's glass windows facing the courtyard. Not from the hallway, from outside. 3 slow knocks. Knock. Knock, knock. We both turned toward the dark glass. At first I saw nothing, just reflections. Then, as my eyes adjusted, I saw something that made my stomach drop. There was a face pressed up against the glass. A man's face, pale, blurry from the reflection but unmistakable. He was standing outside in the courtyard, staring straight in at us. I whispered, "Mrs. Keller, someone's out there." She crept out of her office and whispered back, "No one should be outside. The gates are locked." We stood there, frozen, staring toward the window. The man didn't move, just stood there, his breath fogging the glass slightly. Then slowly he smiled. That smile, wide, too calm, made every hair on my body stand up. Mrs. Keller reached for her phone, dialing 911, her hands shaking. "There's someone outside the school library," she whispered into the receiver. "We're in lockdown." While she was on the phone, I kept my eyes locked on that face, but then it disappeared. One blink, and he was gone. The courtyard was empty again, the glass reflecting only our dim shapes. We waited, terrified, expecting him to reappear. But instead, we heard footsteps. This time inside the hallway, heavy, echoing steps like boots moving fast. Mrs. Keller whispered, "Get behind the counter." We crouched, listening. The footsteps stopped right outside the double doors to the library. The handles rattled, once, twice, locked. Then came the tapping again, but this time from the hallway side of the doors. He had somehow gotten inside the building. Mrs. Keller covered her mouth with her hand. My pulse was so loud I couldn't tell if the noise was in my head or the floor itself shaking. The tapping stopped. Silence. Then we both jumped at the sound of a loud bang, the unmistakable crash of something falling in the back of the library. Near the stacks, Mrs. Keller whispered, "Go, the emergency exit now." We crawled along the carpet, staying low. I remember the faint, musty smell of the old books and the squeak of my palms against the floor. When we reached the emergency door at the back, Mrs. Keller reached up to push the latch, but it wouldn't move. Locked. It was supposed to open from the inside. We turned around. The library was dark except for the faint orange glow of the security lights. And in that dim light, I saw movement between the bookshelves, a tall figure, walking slowly through the aisles. He wasn't running. He wasn't looking for anything. He was just moving, deliberate and quiet. Mrs. Keller's whisper came out shaky. "Don't move." We crouched completely still. The figure stopped 2 rows away. I could see his shadow break the thin slivers of light between the books. Then his head tilted, slightly like he was listening. For a second, I thought he'd spotted us. Then Another sound broke the silence, the faint chirp of a police radio from the hallway. The man turned his head sharply, then ran, his footsteps thundering toward the opposite exit. The doors slammed open. Seconds later, officers flooded the hallway, flashlights slicing through the dark. They yelled, "Police! Show your hands." But by the time they searched the courtyard and the hall, he was gone. They checked every door and window. No forced entry, no broken glass. Here's the part that still doesn't make sense. The police told Mrs. Keller the courtyard gate was padlocked from the outside and had been since before the lockdown. There was no way anyone could have been in there. When they reviewed the security footage, it showed the two of us inside the library, but when the camera turned toward the window where I'd seen the man's face, there was nothing. No figure. No movement. Just me staring at the glass, frozen in fear at something that apparently wasn't there. The officers said it was stress. Maybe the reflection of my own face. But I know what I saw, that smile. Those eyes. The next day, Mrs. Keller didn't come to work. She quit the following week, told the staff she didn't feel safe there anymore, and me? Every time I walk by that library window at night, I can still see a faint smudge on the glass, exactly where that face had been pressed against it. No one ever wiped it away. The second announcement. It happened last winter during my senior year. I went to a big suburban high school in Illinois, around 2,000 students, and lockdown drills were just part of the routine. But that night, the drill wasn't a drill. I stayed late for yearbook committee. There were 4 of us working in the computer lab on the second floor. The teacher, Mr. Lang, was across the hall in his classroom, grading papers. It was snowing outside, and by 6:45 p.m. the school was practically deserted. The heating was on low, and you could hear every creak and hum echo through the building. I remember saying half-jokingly, "It's creepy here when it's empty." Jason, one of the editors, laughed and said, "Yeah, it's like we're in one of those horror movies where the school goes on lockdown." 5 minutes later, that's exactly what happened. The intercom beeped twice, followed by the principal's voice, low, urgent, different from his usual calm tone. "Lockdown. Repeat lockdown immediately. This is not a drill." At first we froze, waiting for someone to laugh. But then the sound of doors slamming shut echoed from downstairs, the custodians locking up, and it became real fast. Mr. Lang came into the lab and said sharply, "Everyone under the desks. Phones on silent now." He locked the door, killed the lights, and crouched with us. My heart was already pounding. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft flakes glowing faintly under the parking lot lights. The first 10 minutes were dead quiet. Then from downstairs came the sound of running footsteps. Fast, heavy, someone sprinting across the tile. Then a door slammed. Then another. We all looked at each other. Mr. Lang held a finger to his lips. From down the hall, faint but distinct, came the sound of yelling, distant, maybe 2 floors down. A man's voice shouting something we couldn't make out. A few seconds later, sirens wailed faintly outside. Police, maybe. But then the intercom clicked again, and a voice, not the principal's goose, said, "All clear. Lockdown over." We all looked up. Mr. Lang frowned. "Stay down," he whispered. That wasn't his voice. The intercom was still on. There was static, then silence. Mr. Lang took out his phone and texted the faculty group chat. No one replied. A full minute passed before we heard it again, the sound of someone trying the door handle. It jiggled once, then twice. Slow. Testing. Mr. Lang whispered, "Don't move." We could see the faint strip of light under the door, and then the shadow of feet. Someone was standing right outside, no knock, no words. Just standing there then. A soft click, like the sound of a key trying the lock. Mr. Lang gripped the nearest chair like a weapon. I could feel Jason shaking next to me. The footsteps moved away after maybe 20 seconds. We sat there in total darkness for what felt like forever. Every few minutes you could hear distant sounds, something heavy dropping, a door closing, muffled voices. It was impossible to tell where it was coming from. Finally, around 7:20 p.m., the intercom came on again. This time it was the principal. "Remain in lockdown. Police are on site. Do not open your doors. That's when I realized the first all clear had been a fake announcement. Someone had hijacked the PA system. My stomach turned cold. Through the window that looked out onto the courtyard, we saw flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the snow. Police cars, SWAT officers moving in. Then, without warning, there was a gunshot. Muffled, distant, maybe downstairs. Then screaming. Jason gasped out loud and covered his mouth. Mr. Lang whispered, "Quiet. Stay down." We all sat there, frozen, while chaos erupted below us. You could hear shouting, running. Commands yelled through megaphones. Then another shot, this one closer. It's strange how your senses go sharp during fear. I could smell the faint burnt dust scent from the heating vents, feel the static in the air, taste metal in my mouth from pure adrenaline. At 7:42 p.m., police banged on the door. Police. "Open up," Mr. Lang hesitated. "Prove it," he yelled. The officer slid an ID badge under the door. District Security. Mr. Lang finally unlocked it, and a flood of armed officers poured in. They told us to keep our heads down and move quickly toward the exit. As we went down the stairwell, the air reeked of floor polish and something else, something metallic. When we reached the first floor, they herded us out through the gym doors into the snow. I remember seeing the reflection of red and blue lights across the icy parking lot. The muffled sounds of radios and officers shouting codes I didn't understand. Later, we found out what happened. Someone had broken into the building, a former student expelled 2 years earlier. He'd managed to sneak in through a side maintenance door while the custodians were still inside. The lockdown had started after he was spotted near the cafeteria. No one was killed, but one officer was injured. The most disturbing part? They said the intruder had a master key, the kind only teachers and admin have access to. They still don't know how he got it. The local news said he'd been caught just outside the gym exit, barefoot in the snow, mumbling something about finishing what he started. Every time I think about that night, what haunts me most isn't the gunshots or the sirens, or even the fake announcement. It's that soft click at our door, because when they arrested him, they found a ring of school keys in his pocket, and one of them, marked Lab 214, was the exact room we were hiding in. The last light in room 108. I was a senior, and I used to help my chemistry teacher, Mr. Patel, clean up the lab after class. He was one of those teachers who trusted students with everything. His keys, the equipment, even staying late unsupervised as long as we locked up. That night, I stayed behind alone to finish a project. It was 8:27 p.m. I remember because I kept glancing at the digital clock above the board, counting down the minutes until I could leave. The school was completely empty by then. The halls outside the lab were dark except for the red glow of the exit signs reflecting off the polished floors. The only light came from the lamp I had on the counter. Everything else was shadows. The air smelled like rubbing alcohol and old textbooks. The heater had shut off for the night, so the room was cool enough that my breath fogged slightly when I exhaled. I was cleaning the last set of glass beakers when the intercom popped. Lockdown. This is not a drill. At first I actually laughed out loud. I thought someone was pranking the system. It had happened once before. But then, the sound of the automatic locks clicking into place down the hall made it real. I froze, listening. Somewhere in the distance, maybe near the gym, a door slammed. Then another. Then silence. I moved quickly, turned off the lamp, locked the classroom door, and crouched behind the counter. The only light now came from that dim red exit sign bleeding through the window in the door. For the first few minutes, it was quiet. Then came the footsteps. Soft at first, like someone pacing slowly through the hallway outside. They didn't sound like boots, more like sneakers. Whoever it was, they weren't walking evenly. It was an uneven rhythm, 2 steps, pause, then 1. Like they were dragging one leg. I held my breath. The steps stopped right outside my door. Then the handle rattled, fast, sharp like someone testing if it was locked. I almost whispered something, but stopped myself. Whoever it was didn't speak. They just pressed against the door once, hard enough to make it creak, then walked away. I waited. After about a minute, I crawled toward the door and peeked through the small glass window. The hallway was empty, but down at the far end, The motion sensor light flicked on. Someone was there. For a split second, I saw the outline of a figure, tall, thin, standing perfectly still in the middle of the hallway, facing my direction. Then the light turned off again. Darkness. I backed away, trying not to make a sound. I pulled out my phone and typed a text to my mom. Still at school. Lockdown. Don't know what's happening. No signal. The school's old cement walls always killed cell reception. I sat there for what felt like half an hour just listening. The silence was thick, like the air itself was holding its breath. Then came a noise from inside the room, a faint metallic clink somewhere behind me. I froze. The storage cabinet in the corner, the one Mr. Patel always kept locked, was slightly open. I didn't remember leaving it like that. I whispered, "Hello?" Nothing. I slowly reached for the nearest thing, a metal rod used for stirring solutions, and took one step closer to the cabinet. Before I could reach it, the intercom clicked on again. All clear. Lockdown over. But the voice wasn't the principal's. It was low, rough, almost whispering, "All clear. You can come out now." I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. A few seconds later, a faint sound came from inside the cabinet. A slow inhale, then a quiet tap on the metal door from the inside. Something, or someone, was in there. I bolted. I ran to the far side of the lab, climbed onto the counter and squeezed into the small maintenance crawl space above the ceiling panel. It was dusty, freezing, and pitch black, but I stayed there, curled up, clutching my phone. Down below, I heard the cabinet door creak open, then slow footsteps moved across the tile, steady, unhurried. Like whoever it was had all the time in the world. They stopped right below me. I could hear breathing, soft, slow, right underneath where I was hiding. Then the footsteps started again, heading toward the door. The handle turned, the door creaked open, and the steps faded down the hall. I waited until I heard sirens outside, real ones this time, before climbing down. The room was empty. But the cabinet door was wide open, the lock broken clean off. Inside, the space was big enough for a person to crouch in. The next morning, the police said the lockdown had been triggered manually from the office. Someone had smashed the fire alarm panel to access the override switch, but the cameras didn't show anyone entering the building after 7 p.m. No forced entry, no footprints in the snow, nothing. They said maybe I was mistaken, that fear played tricks on the senses. But I know what I heard. When I finally grabbed my backpack and started to leave, I noticed something scratched into the inside of the storage cabinet door, faint but clear under the flashlight. I never left.